The Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi has opened the G20 summit in Rome with a call for multilateral action as the only way to solve the world's problems. Mr. Draghi highlighted the unequal distribution of COVID vaccines. A dispute over post-Brexit fishing rights between Britain and France continues to escalate. President Macron says Britain's reputation is at risk. Prime Minister Boris Johnson says France might be in breach of a trade and cooperation agreement. In Sudan, 2 people have been killed by security forces during mass protests across the country following the military coup there earlier this week. Hundreds of thousands took to the streets demanding the restoration of a civilian-led government. And the UAE has become the latest Gulf state to take extreme diplomatic action against Lebanon. On Friday, Saudi Arabia ordered Lebanon's envoy to leave and banned all Lebanese imports.
Political candidates across Japan have made their final pitch to voters ahead of Sunday's lower house election, the first in the pandemic era. It was a short campaign for the more than 1,000 would-be representatives. Each hopes to net one of 465 seats. Over 12 days, they spoke to voters on the street and at transit stations. The political climate has changed in the 4 years since the last general election. The pandemic threatened the lives and livelihoods of people across Japan's cities and countryside. Political parties made their case about what they would do to protect the people and boost the economy. Prime Minister Kishida Fumio's Liberal Democratic Party and its coalition partner Komeito aim to keep their majority and stay in power. Some opposition parties hope to block that attempt with a strategy to unify support and avoid vote splitting. Voters across most of Japan will cast their ballots from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Sunday. Then the counting will begin. NHK World will have the latest results and in-depth analysis. Please join us. The summit of the Group of 20 Nations has gotten underway in Rome with climate change high on the agenda.
From the pandemic to climate change to fair and equitable taxation, going it alone is simply not an option. We must do all we can to overcome our differences.
Discussions on Saturday will include the impact of high energy prices on the global economy and measures against the coronavirus. The leaders are also expected to exchange views on digitalization to eliminate gaps between urban and rural areas. On Sunday, the focus will be on climate change. Summit Chair Italy wants the leaders to find common ground in setting a target year for net zero greenhouse gas emissions. Italian officials hope to bring that momentum to the COP26 climate conference scheduled to start in Britain right after the summit. Japan, the United States, and the European Union have set a goal of achieving net zero emissions by 2050. China and Saudi Arabia say their target year is 2060. Attention is focused on whether the G20 leaders will be able to issue a positive message despite that difference. The summit is being held face-to-face for the first time in 2 years. Italy will announce the outcome of the meeting when it closes on Sunday. Many of the G20 leaders will then move on to Britain to attend the COP26 conference. Taiwan's foreign minister has met with members of the European Parliament in Belgium. He asked for their cooperation to strengthen ties between Taiwan and the European Union, including starting negotiations toward an investment agreement. Taiwan's foreign ministry says Joseph Wu held talks on Friday in Brussels with members of both the Belgian and European parliaments. Wu expressed gratitude to the European Parliament for approving a resolution asking the EU to deepen ties with Taiwan. He called it very significant for the future of relations between the two sides. Earlier this week, Wu visited the Czech Republic and Slovakia. The visit was announced by Taiwan's government in advance. It's rare for Taiwan to give prior notice of visits by a foreign minister to countries with which it has no diplomatic ties. NHK has also confirmed that Wu visited Poland before heading to Belgium. That visit was not announced by Taiwan. Meanwhile, China's foreign minister has condemned the U.S. for urging UN member states to support Taiwan's participation in the body's activities. China's foreign ministry says Wang Yi issued a statement on Friday in Italy. The foreign minister is attending the G20 summit there. The statement refers to an appeal made by U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken on Tuesday. The secretary called on members of the United Nations to support Taiwan. Wang said in the statement Taiwan is part of China's territory. He also said the international community recognizes this. The minister added the U.S. and other nations are trying to achieve a breakthrough on the Taiwan issue, but he said such actions run counter to the commitments they made when they established diplomatic relations with China. Public health officials in the U.S. have cleared the first coronavirus vaccine for children aged 5 to 11. The officials with the Food and Drug Administration approved the emergency use of the Pfizer-BioNTech shot. Advisors to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention will now decide whether to recommend inoculations for the age group. Youngsters who get the vaccine would be subject to the usual requirement to have a second jab 3 weeks later, but they'd receive just 10 micrograms per dose, which is 1/3 of the amount given to people aged 12 and up. CDC officials say in the U.S., more than 8,000 children aged 5 to 11 have been hospitalized with the virus. 146 have died. One study shows that between October 14th and 21st, nearly 120,000 children were infected nationwide. That was a quarter of all infections for the period. Authorities at the Port of Los Angeles say they will start fining ocean carriers that leave containers at terminals for too long. They say the move is designed to ease congestion and free up supply chains. Officials say they will charge carriers for every container due to be moved by truck that remains at the port for 9 days or more. Carriers moving goods by rail will be fined for containers that stay in port for 6 days or more. The amount will be $100 per container and will increase in $100 increments each day. The measure will go into effect on November 1st. The port is concerned by the number of containers sitting at terminals. It's a problem caused partly by a shortage of truck drivers. This has caused a bottleneck of ships waiting to unload. In Okinawa, southwestern Japan, a barrier has been set up in a fishing port to prevent more pumice stones from drifting in. The stones began appearing along the coast earlier this month, affecting local fishing and tourism. They are coming from an undersea volcano that erupted in August near the Ogasawara island chain in the Pacific Ocean. On Saturday, workers used a boat to install the barrier at the entrance of Hentona Port in Kunigami Village. NHK aerial footage shows large volumes of pumice stones drifting offshore. Work to remove the stones from the port got underway on Friday. Workers are using power shovels to scoop them up. The cleanup operation is expected to take 2 to 3 weeks to complete. The husband of Japan's former Princess Mako has failed the New York State bar exam. Komudo Kei says he intends to retake the exam in the new year. NHK interviewed Tokyo-based lawyer Okuno Yoshihiko, who heads a law firm where Komudo once worked. Okuno says he spoke by phone on Saturday with Komudo, who told him that he had failed the bar exam. He says Komudo will retake the exam in February. The lawyer says he also spoke with Mako, who said she will continue to support her husband's studies. The exam results were posted on the website of the New York State Board of Law Examiners on Friday. Komudo's name was not on the list of successful candidates. Komudo has been working as a law clerk in New York State since September after graduating from a law school there. Komudo and Mako were married on Tuesday. The couple are currently in Tokyo but plan to leave for the United States once Mako completes preparations, including obtaining a passport and visa. Those were the stories for this hour.